In 2003, the town of Clydebank lost their football team. This wasn't down to the club being liquidated like we have seen from many others, but through the club being stolen by a businessman who moved them nearly 20 miles away to Airdrie to replace their team that was liquidated. Now, nearly 25 years on, Clydebank are banging at the door of the Football League once again. It is a remarkable achievement for what is the 5th club to represent a Dunbartonshire town, so in this video, I'll be going through the rather tumultuous journey of football in Clydebank, from mergers with clubs 30 miles away, to being sponsored by a band with UK number ones, and now a fan-owned operation looking to regain what was once lost. West Dunbartonshire was one of the early hubs of Scottish football. Renton and Vale of Leven would be Scottish Cup winners, and Dumbarton would win the first 2 Scottish League titles, although the first one was shared with Rangers after a playoff. It's no surprise then that just 5 miles down the road, the rapidly expanding town of Clydebank would get its first football team in 1888. Although not the first to be named Clydebank, there was one in Rutherglen between 1874 until 1886. This first Clydebank-based Clydebank would play in the Scottish Cup against Vale of Leven Wanderers, which, whilst separate from the big Vale of Leven mentioned earlier, were effectively a reserve team for them. This game would end in a 4-3 defeat, but the following year they would play each other again. Or at least they were meant to, but Clydebank turned up 4 players short, so forfeited the game. But then they proceeded to play a friendly where Clydebank won. Welcome to Victorian football. Their third entry into the competition would see them win their first game against Kirkintilloch Athletic, before beating Slamenon after a replay, despite losing the original game. This game was replayed because, despite losing 5-3, all 8 goals were scored at the same end, which had a goal that was the wrong size. 1891 and 1892 would see the club get knocked out in the qualifying rounds and would never play in the main rounds again. After losing their ground in 1892, the club would eventually be round up in 1895, having not transferred into the Scottish Football League from the de facto third tier that was the Scottish Football Federation. A second Clydebank would be formed in 1899, and in their first Scottish Cup foray, they would hold Vale of Leven to a draw, but would lose in a replay. This didn't come without controversy, as they claimed the colour clash meant the referee wasn't able to do his job properly. Some things never change, do they? Although this was brushed off by the SFA, as Clydebank played in all dark blue, while Vale of Leven played in light blue with white shorts. This club wouldn't last though, as they ran out of money very quickly, and after getting a military slide in the cup in the 1901-02 season, they withdrew and folded as they knew they wouldn't get a crowd big enough to keep going. 1914 would see a first truly established senior Clydebank side, who were immediately elected to the Football League, starting off in Division 2. 1914 was also a significant date for another reason. World War I started, and in 1915 lower league football in Scotland was suspended due to just about every able-bodied man being sent to Belgium. World War I did bring some benefits to the area, just ignore the death and destruction, through the rise of the shipbuilding industry. This brought some extra funds into the club through rising attendances, and upon the restart of national football, Clydebank were placed in the top flight thanks to vacancies left by other teams withdrawing. They would stay in the top flight until 1922, where they would be relegated, promoted, and then relegated. The late 1920s economic downturn as part of the wider Great Depression saw the club struggle, and, as like many lower league clubs in this time, saw them be dissolved in 1931. Despite the demise of the league side, there was still a side in the juniors that the people of Clydebank could follow. Originally formed as Dunocha in 1899 in the nearby village of the same name, the club would move to Kilbarry Park in Clydebank the following year and become Clydebank Juniors. The club would start to find success in the 30s after the demise of the senior team with wins in local leagues and cup competitions, but in 1942, a year after the Clydebank Blitz that saw the Luftwaffe destroy the town, Clydebank Juniors would win their first and only Scottish Junior Cup. Juniors would eventually become a Football League side in 1964, but not through conventional methods. They merged with another club in a similar manner to how Inverness Thistle and Caledonian merged to make Inverness Caledonian Thistle. Those two, however, were local to each other. Clydebank merged with East Stirlingshire, who play in Falkirk. This was because the Steedman brothers, who owned the club, weren't impressed with the dwindling attendances due to the yo-yo nature of the previous decade. They decided to merge with Clydebank Juniors and move the club west to become East Stirlingshire Clydebank, but after a legal challenge by supporters, the merger would last a single season and East Stirlingshire would move back to Falkirk the following year. What didn't leave Clydebank, however, was the Steedman brothers, who, upon having their plans scuppered by Shire fans, decided to form a new Clydebank FC. They continued to play at Kilbarry Park and played in the Combined Reserve League for a season before joining the Football League, meaning Clydebank had a Football League side. For real this time, for the first time in 35 years. They would bounce around the mid-table positions in the second division, but after league reconstruction made the second division the third tier after the formation of the new Premier Division, Clydebank would win the league on goal difference ahead of Raith Rovers to earn promotion to the first division. The following season, Clydebank would finish second, meaning they would be playing in the Premier Division, meaning top flight will be played in the town for the first time in over 50 years. This didn't go well for the Bankies, however, as they would finish bottom with 19 points, amassing 6 wins and 7 draws from 36 games. And if you're thinking that those results don't equal 19 points, it was 2 points for a win until the 1994-95 season. They would miss out on an immediate return to the top flight after finishing third on goal difference behind Kilmarnock and a point behind league winners Dundee, before becoming a mid-table side until they secured their eventual return in the 1984-85 season, once again finishing runners-up. Their return to the top flight would see an improvement, as this time they finished on 20 points, which was still bottom of the table, but they wouldn't be relegated due to, once again, the leagues being reconstructed. The following season saw further improvement as they would finish on 24 points from 44 games, but they did finish 11th, 3 points clear of bottom side Hamilton Academical. It was still relegation. They would finish third for the next 3 seasons, but in that third season they managed to go on their best cup run, making it to the Scottish Cup semi-final after beating Albion Rovers, St Mirren and Stirling Albion before being defeated by Celtic at Hampden. After this point, Clydebank would become a mid-table second-tier club, with their main claim to fame after this cup run being sponsored by Wet Wet Wet, a band who were from the town and had managed to reach number 1 with Goodnight Girl in 1992. But after the 94-95 season saw them finish 1 place above the relegation zone, it was revealed the club had debts totalling £120,000, which is about £250,000 today. The Taylor Report had also brought in new regulations that were leading to issues with Kilbarry, which was last upgraded in the 70s, where they brought in wooden seats to reduce the capacity to below 10,000 as to avoid the previous standards for stadiums of that size. Due to all of this, the club were forced to sell Kilbarry in 1996, but were promised a new site in the town. This didn't happen, so they were forced to play at Boghead Park, home of local rivals Dumbarton. In this season, the club would be sold to John Hall, who was a millionaire based out of Bermuda. As you can probably guess with the mention of a British overseas territory, that Bermuda is a popular place for rich people due to there being no capital gains, investment income, dividends, and all that sort of tax stuff. Under John Hall, Clydebank made multiple attempts to find a new permanent home. However, none of these were actually in Clydebank. The first plan was to move to Dublin. Yes, they wanted to move a Scottish team to Ireland, which, when you consider during this time there was also plans to move English Premier League side Wimbledon to Dublin, makes you wonder what the fans of Shamrock Rovers, Shelbourne, Bohemians and St Pat's all felt. This Dublin plan would be rejected by the United Clydebank supporters, the FAI, the SFA and the SFL, but this didn't stop the plans to go anywhere but Clydebank, with more far-fetched ideas such as Galashiels in the Borders on the other side of Scotland from Clydebank, or Carlisle, which already had a well-established football team in the English Football League. During this time on the pitch, the club would be relegated down to the second division, after a season that saw them finish on 10 points, with only 1 win in 36 games. Meanwhile, there were still plans to find a new home for the club, but just like 35 years prior, shenanigans to the east would engulf the club once again. Airdrieonians in the early 90s managed to make it to a Scottish Cup final and played in Europe, but due to the 10,000 seater rule that was implemented as part of the Taylor Report, Broomfield was not suitable, and so was sold with the promise of a new stadium in the town being built. Unlike Clydebank, this would actually happen, with the Excelsior Stadium opening in 1998, but this was the beginning of the end of Airdrie. This was due to the stadium being delayed due to North Lanarkshire Council delaying planning permission.
Flash is the fastest guy in there. You need something done, he's on it.
I hope so. We are really fighting the clock and every minute counts. Wait, they're all sloths?
And when it first opened, attendances were below what was expected. This led to an off-the-field death spiral, where despite Challenge Cup wins and a promotion push, the debts had become too much and Airdrie had gone bust. Jim Ballantyne, a local accountant, would not let his town go without a Football League side, something the original Airdrieonians had provided since 1894. After going through the election process, Ballantyne's club, Airdrie United, would not be admitted to the Football League as they lost out to Gretna. Desperate to find any way back into the Football League, the struggling Bankies provided the perfect opportunity. Despite a bid made by United Clydebank supporters, Ballantyne would be successful in buying the club, moving them to Airdrie and taking their league place. Clydebank were once again wiped off the footballing map. Thankfully, seeing as Clydebank had gone through this plenty of times before, it wouldn't take long for a new Clydebank to be formed, this time by the United Clydebank supporters. There would be a strange sense of deja vu with this new club, as they would start off in the West Region Juniors, with games being played at Glenhead Park in neighbouring Dunocker, which is how the previous Clydebank Juniors came about. If there was something good to come from the thieves that are Airdrie United, is that they let the new club continue using the badge and name of the previous club, which, good for them, I suppose. 2003-04 would see the Bankies play their first season, starting in the West Region Central League Division 2, which they won with crowds reaching 1,000, which, considering the level, is impressive. They would continue to rise through the ranks, including reaching a Junior Cup quarter-final before, in 2008, themselves along with Yoker Athletic would move into Home Park, which was actually in Clydebank, meaning they would be playing games in the town for the first time since 1996. This first season in town would see them reach a Junior Cup final, but would see defeat to Auchinleck Talbot, with 3,700 fans supporting them at Rugby Park. They would eventually rise to the top of the West Region Junior Leagues, where they would remain until 2020. As mentioned in a video specifically about the juniors, 2020 saw the great defection as the West Region clubs would ditch the juniors and create the West of Scotland League, where winning the top division would see a playoff against the East of Scotland League winners and the South of Scotland League winners to see who would earn promotion to the Lowland League, provided the club have an SFA licence. The Bankies would get themselves a licence in 2021, which made them eligible for promotion, but also granted them the ability to play in the Scottish Cup. Their first cup run would see them beat Dalkeith Thistle 7-0, beat League 2 Elgin City 2-1 at Borough Briggs after replay, beat Clyde 2-0 at Home Park before being knocked out by Annan 4-3. 2022-23 would see Clydebank finish 4th, 14 points behind winners Beef Juniors, but in the cup would beat Boyton Thistle 4-1 before losing to Spartans 3-1. 23-24 would again see a 4th place finish, but this time with a 6-point gap to Beef, while their Scottish Cup run would see them beat Fort William and Dalkeith before defeat to Highland League side Formertown United. 24-25, however, would be the big one. An incredible league season that saw them only lose once in 30 games, which came against Largs in Game 26. They won the league by 17 points over Auchinleck, earning themselves a playoff against Musselburgh. Their Scottish Cup adventures, meanwhile, would start with a 7-0 win against St Andrews, followed by a 3-1 win against Girvan, a 3-0 win away against Keith, the Highland football team, not just a single guy called Keith, and then a 2-0 win against Buckie Thistle before being handed their biggest ever game, a trip to Edinburgh to face Hibs. 2,500 Bankies would make the trip to Easter Road, but their journey would end with a 3-0 defeat thanks to a double from Martin Boyle and a goal from Moody Molotnikov. The playoffs at the end of the season, however, would probably surpass that day in Edinburgh, as they would face off against Musselburgh Athletic of the East of Scotland League, who themselves had a very strong league campaign. The first leg at Musselburgh would see a 1-1 draw, but the second leg at Home Park would see a crowd of 1,170 witness Clydebank win 2-0 and secure promotion to the Lowland League, seeing them reach Tier 5 and one step closer to their ultimate goal, a return to the Football League. Going into this season then, hopes were high for the Bankies to finish high up the league table. Their large and loyal fanbase would certainly provide an advantage over most Lowland League sides, but how this season has gone so far is surely not what they expected. They currently find themselves locked in a title battle with Linlithgow Rose, who I tipped to win the league this season, but even if this season does not lead to a title, next season would easily be their best opportunity to win a Tier 5 league, thanks once again to league reconstruction. This season is the final year of the Lowland League as we know it, as for 26-27, it will be split into an East and West division. And considering the gap that Clydebank have to the next highest West club, which is Caledonian Braves, I'm confident they would come out on top should they fail to win promotion this season. Of course, there is a slight issue in that going into the season, Clydebank only have an SFA entry license, whilst a bronze license is required to take part in the playoffs. I'm confident that Clydebank would get this without any problems, seeing how well run they have been. All of this has been achieved whilst being fan-owned from the very beginning, and this is arguably what makes it such a feel-good story. We typically hear of clubs rising through the ranks thanks to big money backers, but Clydebank have kept it true to what really matters for a football club: the fans. And it's something that plenty of other clubs, especially in the SPFL, can learn from. That's all for this video, and of course, I hope you enjoyed. Would you like to see Clydebank return to the Football League? How long do you think it would take? Or do you have stories of visiting Kilbarry in the past and other memories of the original Clydebanks? Let us know in the comments below. Liking, sharing, hyping. God, I hate having to say hyping. Why have they added it? Anyway, liking, sharing, hyping, and subscribing are all appreciated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.